Hi, this is the fellow passenger, and today we are going to make some generative beats. This will be the first video in a little mini-series of at least 2 episodes, there might be more, but looking at percussion in generative music. Or if you're not into generative music, I think this might still be really useful for you, both for getting out of the static loop or when you're stuck for ideas and you just need to add a little bit of spice into your beats and generate something that you wouldn't be able to think about yourself. There are loads of techniques out there, but we're going to try to stick to 3 in this video. And before we jump into it, here is some of what's to come. Okay, I hope that you are still there. Thank you for tuning into my channel. And before we start making some beats, I would like you to check out my Patreon page if you haven't done so already. If you feel like you're able to part with a small amount of money, even if it's just for 1 month, to support this channel, I would be ever so grateful, and in return you'll be able to download this project file along with a couple of Max for Live devices that I will be using later in this video. If that is not something you're able to do at the moment, I fully understand. Energy bills going through the roof, everything else. You can still follow along. I mentioned some Max for Live devices that I will be using in here that I've either mended or done myself. You will still be able to do everything in this video. They are just little tools that may make life easier for you, but you'll be fine. I would also really appreciate if you could give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't done that already, and maybe hit the notification bell. YouTube is weird. It becomes very anonymous, and that thumbs up thing is one of very few ways for me to know that someone is appreciating what I'm doing. So please consider that. All right, let's get started. We are going to make some beats, and for that we're going to need some sounds. And we're not going to focus on the sounds themselves today. That is what we will be doing in the next video, which is hopefully going to be up in about a week's time. Let's start with a kick. Let's just create a little group of sounds here just for demonstration purposes. So I am going into instrument and drum synth. That is something that comes with Ableton Live. They are little Max for Live devices that create pretty decent percussion sounds. So we've got a kick. I just want to make that decay a little bit shorter, and I'm just gonna, doesn't really matter so much for this. And we will need some form of snare. I don't really like that snare, so I'm going to take the FM and just quickly doesn't really sound like a snare, but I like it. I'll pretend I like it. It'll be fine. Then we're going to need a hi-hat. The sound design element is really for next week's video, but just to make sure that this is just not going to be super static and boring, we are going to spice that up a bit by using the expression control. It sits here under MIDI effects, and if you haven't looked into that yet and you haven't come across my videos, because if you would have seen any of my other videos, you would have seen me use this all the time. I use it maybe way too much. And for generative music, it's an amazing tool because you can generate random values. You can go and set these to random, and every time you press a key, you will get a new random value, and you can map that to tone. But to be fancy, I'm going to use my own modified version of that. And here we come to the first Max for Live device that I mentioned earlier. You don't absolutely need this. You can use the regular expression control, but if it is a tool that you use a lot, you may want to consider my version or hacking your own if you want to. It works exactly in the same way. The only difference is that I've added this column called label. Even though when I map this to something, you get a little description of what that value is, but I often use these to map them to things happening in other channels and stuff, and I use loads of these. And if I open a project a couple of days later, I have no idea what's going on. It's just pure spaghetti. So I've just added this in where you can type your own little descriptions if you want to. So even if it's not this project is not super messy in that sense. We're just going to make some beats today. It's just a helpful little thing. So we are randomizing the decay and the tone here just to get a little bit of, a bit more interest in the hi-hat department. I'm just going to make sure the decay is not super long and it's never absolutely zero. So we dial the minimum and maximum values in. Turn down the volume a bit. And then we need a fourth sound, and we are going to use the FM for that again. We want those little percussions that might happen in between things. That's not a snare, not a kick, and not a hi-hat. We just want some other random percussive things. And we are going to use the expression control again. I have done a preset which are all random because that's what I tend to use anyway. I'm going to randomize most things here apart from the decay, which we can randomize decay a little bit, but we generally want a very short decay for this. Let's see. Very short decay. Come on. And for this one, again, just going to put a filter on it because we don't want much bass out of this one. We don't want to steal the thunder from the kick drum. Just filter that and we can turn the volume down. Because it feels like the kick and the sort of snare one drum are the sounds that are the heroes, and these ones are the hi-hats, and these ones they're sort of filling in just to add a bit of momentum. Okay, that took longer than I hoped it would. It doesn't matter. Let's make all these the same color to keep them organized, and we can actually put them in a group by hitting Command G. All right, let's look at how the first generative technique idea thing. So we're going into the session view by clicking up here. Arrangement view. And we are going to select the two first bars for the kick drum. And we are going to insert an empty MIDI clip and drag that out. So we got the same one looping twice, and we're going to hit the loop button. So we got those running in a little loop. The first technique is a very simple one, and you might not have come across it if you haven't used Ableton for very long. It was introduced in Ableton 11, and it's easy, but it's hidden away a little bit. So you click on your MIDI clip, so you see this arrangement view with the piano roll. There's a little button here. If you click that one, disappears. Chance. Easiest way of just adding a little bit unpredictability to your beats. I am going to put a kick in. There we are. Let's just make a little kick pattern here. doesn't matter so much what I do, we can keep it. And let's not do 120. That's recipe for boring. All right, so we've got quite a static loop going there, even though they're not necessarily a 4/4 beat. Your brain is soon going to pick up that this is just happening over and over again. That's where this chance comes in. So you select the drums, maybe all of them apart from the first one, and you drag them down. So you can see we've dragged them down to, you can see the value over here changing when I'm dragging it down to, let's say, 50%. That means that every time the marker runs over there, it's going to roll the dice, and it will be a 50-50% chance whether this drum will play or not. So every time this loop plays, it will be slightly different, but we keep the first one consistent. And why I'm doing that is that I want to anchor this beat to help your brain understand when the loop or the, it's restarting again. Of course, it's up to you. You can make that random too, but that may make your music a little bit more chaotic. You can play around with it. We may want, let's tone them down even more, but we do certain ones, like actually we move that one there. So at the 2-bar mark, and we make that one almost 100%. So that one is quite likely to play. These ones are a lot less likely. We can do these ones that are on the beat a little bit more likely than the others. So you can hear that every time it plays, the pattern is not exactly the same. This is a super easy way, very basic, to create a bit of a randomization. And we are going to do the same with the snare. And you can have a little think here, which part of, I'm just doing that as a 2-bar loop that runs twice within that 4-bar loop. Here, do you want to anchor your beat with any of these? Maybe you want the first, and let's say we put a snare. Realize I just want to do a little change here in the kick drum. We don't want to kick here. For this particular example, I just don't want the kick and the snare happening at the same time. This is the good with this, because you can dial in how much randomness you want. So here we got that on in between the kicks. So maybe we want the first one and the third one always to play, but these ones to play fairly often, but not all the time. And then we can do these ones that I've just added in now that are a bit more random. We don't want one there, I don't think. Those ones, that one again, we probably need to move that bit. They're quite unlikely to play, but we'll just add a bit. And with the hi-hat, let's just do 1 bar here, keep it simple, and we do all 16th notes. So if you hold down the Option key on a Mac, I suppose it would be Alt on a PC, and drag, then you'd make sure you stick to that one note, otherwise you might be drawing all over the place. Looping that. are going to do the same for the percussion, but this one we are never going to have them on the same as where the snare drum and the kick will always happen. It can overlap with some of the others, and these one are a little bit less likely. I think we should do the same with the hi-hat here actually. We drag down the chance a bit. You can hear that we already got a beat. And just to spice it up, we're not going to look specifically at effects today. Let's just get a bit of vibe. Let's add some OTT to the entire group. OTT, you will find that under Audio Effects, Dynamics, Multiband Dynamics, OTT. OTT stands for over the top, and it will make everything sound like it's being whipped. And we probably want to turn this. And to add a little bit of flavor, let's take the last random thing for this percussion here, and we'll send that to the reverb send. We probably want to drag that down. I realize I've got the Valhalla delay on there, or the vintage reverb, and I'm going to replace that. Sorry for this little side note, because if I'm sharing this file with you and you don't have it, that's not going to use the built-in reverb with Ableton instead. And then of course, drum bus is going to make everything sound absolutely fine. So we're going to Audio Effects, Drive, Drum Bus. Okay, I think that's the first technique done. We're going to keep that group there. I'm going to mute it, and then we're going to start again using another technique. So we'll go out here into session view. We got our group there, and let's create a MIDI track, and we are going to use the same. You can obviously use whatever sounds we want, but we want to have something that's a kick, something that's a snare-ish, because we don't necessarily want to have a snare, but something doing that job. We want the hi-hat, we want the percussion stuff. Percussion. And let's pick another color so we can tell these apart. We can have that in that pinky color. All right, I am just going to do something different here so we don't get all the same sounds all the time. I'm just going to take a kick from, that's hi-hats. Sorry, we're going to take a kick from maybe that soft kick will do for now. Drag it down here. I'm going to use a sampler instead of the simpler. Kick. Let's find a snare from, maybe we can do a clap instead actually. Some home synthesized claps that I've made. If you are interested in synthesizing claps, check out one of my older videos. I put a link in the description if you want to make your own ones. And then we need a hi-hat from one of my other libraries. Oops. That one will do. let's just make sure that this particular one, we put a high pass filter on it. You can obviously use your own sounds for this. I'm sure you got some hi-hats and snares and whatever chucked around. And for the percussion thing, maybe we just do the same thing as we did with the other one. We can maybe dial it in slightly differently. We use the FM thing maybe. Should we use the clang? What's the clang? I can't remember what the clang. Oh, cowbell. Let's just actually let's use the cowbell, and then we go in and take the max for live expression control, and then we modulate the hell out of that cowbell. What's that going to sound like? We need more. We need to modulate the pitch. We need a short. Is the clav, has that got other? Ha, funny. Okay, let's group those. Now we're going to use another technique here, which is using the arrangement view to create a little bit of randomness. We are going to create a few different patterns here. We are just going to dial them in. We are going to take double click to add a pattern there, and if we just set some, maybe the first one is very simple, do that. Just going to go into that one and make sure that the decay is just ringing out, and we don't want that to be multi-timbral. We just or polyphonic. We want it to be just one kick at a time, so we don't want to say kick chord. Very basic beat. And do another one which might be a little bit more intense. And this one, we can do one that is and then we can use the chance again in these ones by all means. So we can do one that is super, forgetting to hold the option key. That could potentially be super intense, but we turn the chance down so you can blend that. Maybe we can do one here with some, go away, some with triplets in. Do the first one there, and then we right click and we set to triplets, and maybe eighth notes. So we can do something that's going to be, how's that going to sound? Yeah, why not? Yeah, well, we've got triplets signed in. We can just do that's fine. And then we got the snare pattern. Maybe we do one with just a snare there. And then maybe we do one with a snare in both. We do one with just a snare on the last one. We can do one with snares. Maybe snares like that, maybe a snare like that, and then we do lots of snares there, but we drag the chance down. Going to get to the random element in a moment. We just need to create a few different options here to work with. And here we are doing one that is just We can hit that. And then obviously one with all 16th note and one with all 16th note, but the chance is low. And then we can do one with some irritating pattern, a bit like this. It's not that irritating, it's quite nice. So we do every second so that we get 8th notes rather than 16th. And then maybe we do one with just a couple in there. Fine. And then for percussion, maybe we'll want to do that, and then we can do one with 32s. Oh, how's that going to sound? Really irritating, maybe. And then maybe one. Maybe one with just one in, and one with all of them in. One of them with all of them in, but very low chance. And one with just like a hi-hat pattern, maybe, sort of in between notes. Will I regret that I've used that cowbell? Okay, so we've set up a whole bunch of different ones. The thing we're going to look at now is follow actions. And yes, you can click that tab and then this will just loop forever. But if we go in to I've just forgotten where they are. Where are the follow actions? Okay, so you can play that. If you click on that, that loop will just play forever. So just to add the generative element or the randomness into this, we're going to use something called follow actions. So if you select your, let's start with the kick drum, and we go into the clip here and you see this little triangle, click on that and you can enable follow actions. And what this does is that when this pattern reaches the end, it will just check, what shall I do next? And by default, it's playing next clip. So you would just go from the kick pattern 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just a step down. You can choose lots of other different things here. So we are going to change that to any. That means that it could randomly play itself again. That's fine. We can do that. And it will also roll the dice here. So you will do, now it's 100% to the left, which means that when it reaches the end, it's always going to pick a random one. But you could do here, do you want it to stop? Do you want it to play again? Previous, next? You can choose these. And then you can set this slider here, depending on, is it going to be the left option or the right option? So you can use that, but we're going to keep that. Let's set them all to any. Actually, we do mark them all. Enable follow actions, and we set that to any. That's fully to the left. And now if I hit play here on the master, it's just going to start the first row, and then the follow actions will kick in. So you will get different combinations of the kick and the snare and the hi-hat and the percussion. The other interesting thing you can do is obviously do here is going to the kick. All of these now are they 4 bars long, I think. Or they're two bars long. you can make these patterns at different lengths as well. So you can have one pattern going on for longer than the others, and then you can create some syncopated things. And again, we're just going to go in and add a bit of drum bass on the group. So we just get a bit of boom and a bit of glue, compressor, crunch, just put. And obviously now it's just, this is great for live. It's just like mangling these out. If you actually set these to record, we go into session view and just hit the record button here. Let's make that a bit longer. You can see here, you just render out those combinations, and then you can just chuck these if you don't want them anymore, and then you've just sort of generated a whole melody. All right, that was a quick one to do. I'm going to ditch these. You can take this file and re-record in them in if you want to. I'm just going to close this one out, boop, and mute that one. And now we're going to look at the third technique of creating random beats. Again, we are just going to need some sounds, and I am just going to take, let's just grab some other samples just to get a little bit of variation. What should we do? We need some kicks. I got a lot of stuff here. I need to create a new MIDI track to start with. Whatever, I'm just going to take that one. I hate that. I don't want the blub at the end. That will do. And we need another one. We need some sort of snare thing, clap thing, something. We need something. We need that will do. It doesn't sound like a snare, but sorry, you're a snare today. I'm going to make sure that that plays all the way out. So just increase the release, and I've changed the voices to 1 so we don't get a polyphonic version. I don't want this to be polyphonic either. And then again, let's find some hi-hat somewhere. Oh, that sounded probably quite quiet. Oh, no. That's not what I wanted. I want another MIDI track and then very low volume. That will do for our hi-hat, and then we're going to need some percussion. So maybe for this one, we are just going to take, we make a new MIDI channel. We take a, it'll be a bit of a sneak peek for next week's one, but we're just going to take a sampler, and then we are going to take, these, just going to take these sounds, lots of them, drag them into the sampler, and then click on zone, and then here they're all selected, all the different samples, and I will set them, distribute them equally, so now they're distributed across the keyboard. I'm going to turn scale off so we don't pitch the sounds. They're going to play at their native pitch in whatever they were recorded with, and I am going to go into MIDI effects and choose random. So every time I press a key, it's actually just going to change it into another random key, and I want it to be 100% chance to be random. And the scale choices, bidirectional. So you can hear it's picking lots of different sounds every time I press a key, and we don't want that to be polyphonic either. Okay, we got our sounds now, and I am going to pick another color. Let's do that blue one, and then we do a group, and then we have that. To make beats for this, we are going to use a Max for Live device that is free to download. I'll put a link in the description. I have not made this device. And what this is something called grids. And if you are into modular synthesizers, you may have come across this before, because it's originally a Eurorack module called Grids, made by a company called Mutable Instruments. And it's a really nice device for generating drum patterns. I'm going to try to explain how this works. So actually, just to explain how this works, before we start with this, I'm just going to mute that entire group. I am going to take a drum kit. This is just a little side note, just to explain how this works before we're going to start using it. I'm going to pick, I'm just going to pick the 808 core kit here. So we've got some drum sounds, I think. Let's see. And then I'm going to take grids. And now when I play, we got a drum pattern. Basically, it sends out 3 MIDI keys, one for bass drum, one for snare, and one for hi-hat. You can see them being triggered here. These dials, that's how frequent the bass drum is. So if I'm going to turn that up, we will get more bass drums. Hi-hat, same. And the snares. Obviously, well, I don't need to show that. You know that. You understood that anyway. It's based around the same drum pattern, though. It's just increasing the frequency of the bass drums and snare drums within that set rhythm. If you want to change the type of pattern it's playing, then you need to use map X and map Y. So imagine that this is the X and Y coordinates on a map, so horizontal and vertical, and imagine that each one of those coordinates has got a unique drum rhythm. There's no way of seeing exactly what those rhythms are, but you can dial these just to create a different, the X and Y, to create a different type of pattern. So let's just, I can't remember what the default values were, so I'm just going to open a new one. A very basic pattern, but if we change this, we're going to get the same sort of frequency of kicks and snares, but played in a different way. And then we got the chaos down here, which then infuses more randomness into this. So you can play around with this and create really nice beats. That's a very quick top view of what this does. So let's just ditch this channel now. Here's our group, and for kick, what we are going to do, because I tend to, it's personal preference, I tend to like to divide each drum sound into its unique channel. So for the first one, we don't want the snare, we just want the kick. And we need to turn that on. So this is playing it at C1, which is very low down on the keyboard, and as this is a sample, if we change the scale to 0, because that means that the sampler will not, it doesn't matter which key you press, it's always going to play it at the native pitch. There we go. And for the second one, which is snare. We should just name these better. Kick, snare. Then we want to use another grids, and we want to turn, we turn that to zeros. We never want those to play. We just want the snare to play. And why I'm doing this is because this one is based around snare patterns, which is nicely paired with the bass drum. So you don't get, of course, you can use bass drum for all of them, but that's quite likely to end up that you get a kick and a snare exactly at the same time. This is just going to space it out a bit more. And then we can choose another pattern for this. And then the same for the hi-hat, obviously. Turn these down, and we want the hi-hat pattern. That's a terrible hi-hat. Let's turn that into a sampler, and we go in and we just make that decay, the envelope really short, and we put a high. What's interesting with this is also that it's sending out velocity. So if you can make velocity sensitive instruments, and then you can introduce randomness like that as well. Let's dial the chaos up on all of these. That snare sound is super irritating. I need to ruin it with some expression control. So where do we have our expression control? So obviously this is spitting up MIDI notes. So it's going to trigger this. It's going to pitch, and we change. No, actually, let's turn the FM bit in there, and then we can do the volume of the FM tone. And then you can use one of the other ones for this. This is the hi-hat, and then for the percussion, we can just take another grids, and we can, let's say, use the hi-hat track, but we dial it in differently. Call that perk. So we add another grids here. Or do we want the snare? Yeah, maybe we do the snare, and we want quite a lot of snare, and we just put another one, another coordinate on the map in, and we want a lot of chaos. This one obviously needs to sit before the random, otherwise we don't. Maybe we can go a combination of the snares and the... And let's just, without thinking too much, let's just add a bit of drum bass to this. As much as you like. I don't know what else we can do. Just add a really fast echo to everything. We can maybe take for every kick drum, let's just do another expression control, and whenever the kick hits, we go in and just change the delay time and set repitch, and also we just probably want we set the dry wet also at random, but we probably want that to make sure that, oh hang on, not the delay time probably we want fairly short, and the dry wet we probably never want it entirely wet. And now we've added a bit of chaos and things that obviously adds a bit of random stuff to it. Now I mentioned at the beginning that there were two Macs for live devices that I was going to share with you. Again, this is one that you don't necessarily need. You can obviously go in and dial all these things by yourself. But I have created an audio device called Prandom Trigger Map 7. If you have followed this channel for quite a while, you may have remembered that ages ago I had something called a Prandom Map 5, which was a rudimentary version of the expression control, because I think the expression control did not used to have the random as an option. So I built this device that was just the random stuff, because that was all that I was after. Anyway, that's a long time ago, and I've made this new device, which is an audio device. It doesn't affect the audio as such, but it means that it will be placed further down the chain rather than before the instrument. It will be placed after the instrument. It doesn't really matter. This one is like the random in the expression control, but rather than being triggered when I'm pressing a key, so we're in the kick drum here now. I'm just going to arm that. So every time I press that, you can see the sound is playing, that is playing, but nothing is happening over here. Because sometimes you want the random to happen at other times, or when you want it to. So I've set that, I made a little trigger button that needs pressing for this to be randomized. So I'm just going to map this to the coordinates of that. And we can just actually see if we're bored with that kick drum pattern, we can just click trigger here. And it will just randomize that differently for you. So we can do that with all of them, of course. And no, gosh, that's not the one I wanted. I want the kick drum. I don't ever want the kick drum to trigger. I want the snare drum in this case. And then I can do one here. Another reason why this Prandom Map 7 type tool can be useful is because you could put this on a separate channel and trigger it by something else, but by hitting a MIDI key. But it's just making it a bit messy. If you need to randomize the kick drum, you need a separate track that actually doesn't play kick drum just to have an expression control. This allows you to put it on the same channel because this is not being triggered by MIDI, as in by a MIDI note. Let's do one for here as well. And we map that to all of these values. There. Okay. Boom, 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 boom. Trigger and changing all the values. Nice. Okay, now we might want to be able to randomize all of these in one go, and then we can go in and do that. Right click on there, and I just got my computer keyboard here, so I'm going to do edit key map, and for that one I'm just going to hit A, And I'm going to do that on all of these. And turn that off. So now every time I hit the A key on my keyboard, you can see that's updating. That's updating as well, all of them. So if I play, just to add a little bit of flavor to that, let's do another MIDI device that I created in a previous video and shared with you, but I'm going to share with you again because it's interesting things. So if we do edit key map, this thing allows us to randomize the tempo of the song. So if we, every time I press this now, I've mapped that to the A key on my keyboard again. So if I play the beat now, great. Okay, so that was 3 ways of randomizing beats. We were just using the chance. The second one was using follow actions in the arrangement view. And the last one was looking at the Max for Live device grids. I hope you enjoy that. If you want to come back in about a week's time, we are going to look at how we can push this further, building on what we've done today and doing more with the sounds that go in there. So literally by a key press, you will get a completely different sounding beat. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe. And if you can, please check out my Patreon. There will be lots of hugs and kisses. You probably don't want to kiss me, but anyway, thank you for watching and goodbye.